As some of you know, I have autism. Well, Asperger's, but it's called autism spectrum disorder, my official diagnosis. And I was diagnosed not recently, but when I was in fact only 3.5, when I still could not talk. But I very quickly became articulate. Very quickly. I began to talk normally, have no speech issues by the time I was 5, 6. I mean, I still had some trouble pronouncing my words. When I was in kindergarten, there was this girl who was kicking me. Actually, I was 5, so I was in kindergarten. There was this girl who was kicking me all the time, and I told her stop it, but I still couldn't pronounce words the right way, so it sounded like as if I said stupid, or stupid, So I got punished for it, and then I explained to the teacher that she was kicking me. I was telling her to stop it. The teacher, of course, forgave me. The teacher, of course, apologized to me, but the damage was done. I was punished and my lunch was taken away. Of course, that's abuse, but, how else are you going to teach a kid not to do something? So that was the first time that I got in trouble for something that I didn't do, and I got very angry. So I kind of elbowed the girl and said, thanks a lot, liar. And I got in more trouble for that. So when I explained the whole incident to the teacher, she told me, well, because I was really articulate already, I told her everything that happened, the whole story, and she was like, "Well, I'm sorry that that I believed her and I didn't believe you." We said, "Next time, don't hit someone when they lie against you." And she was deliberately kicking me. Like, it wasn't like she was accidentally; she was deliberately did it. And so when I said stop it, she knew that she could get me in trouble because I couldn't talk properly yet. But I knew the words I needed to say, but I still couldn't pronounce them the right way. So I got in trouble. But that was the first time of me getting in trouble for something I didn't do. But it was a very isolated incident that never really happened again. And I kind of bullied her for that afterwards. I bullied only her because she kind of, I felt like she was always being mean to me, so I had a right to do back, bully her back. But in the end of the school year, we kind of became friends, and we promised not to bother each other anymore. That was a few months before I graduated, went on to first grade. But I didn't know that I had a disability. I thought I was just in a regular school, because they were teaching us stuff. They were teaching us math, history. But the school I went to was actually a school for kids with autism. It was a public school in Bayside. It was, I forgot exactly the name of the school, but it was near Marathon Parkway. It was actually just a little off to Northern Boulevard. It was called 227 at 710. I remember the name of the school. But it's a school for I think up to 2nd or 3rd grade. And after I spent about 2 years there, so 96 to 97, 97 and 98 to 98 to 99. So I was there from 96 to 97. That was the first year. And then 97 to 98, that was the second year. And the third year was 98, 99. So then I went to PS 174, a school right here in my area. That was a regular school. And that was the first year that I was not only in a regular school, but not in inclusion. I was not even in District 75 yet. That was only 1 year that I was in a regular classroom for regular kids. And I did well. I academically did pretty well. But I had issues with other students. I didn't get along with the other classmates. And because I could not get along, because of my autism, I couldn't socialize properly, I was put into PS 177, a school for kids with learning disabilities, even though I had no trouble keeping up academically. I knew how to do math. I actually even made it into a spelling bee when I was in PS 174. I even got hundreds on some spelling tests. So I definitely didn't really have trouble academically, and I got good grades in a lot of my tests and quizzes. But because I would always get into fights with other students, where I would get beat up, my mom realized that maybe regular school wasn't a good fit for me, and I was put into special ed school. But then that special ed school was too low functioning for me, I was told. So I was put into something called an inclusion program, where I would be in a regular classroom, but with staff. Things went well for a couple of years, but a big incident happened when I was 10. I said something I shouldn't have said, and caused a very traumatic, and it became very traumatizing, like psychologically traumatizing, and I developed OCD that lasted a few years, and I had to go to therapy to treat myself and get rid of it. Yeah, I got rid of OCD, but then I went to middle school where I was severely bullied. A lot of that story, where kids would do bad things to get me in trouble. And the inclusion director I had that year was just a horrible person. She deliberately punished me for stuff that other students did, for talking back, for standing up for my rights. Then I was sent to a special ed school in Boston because of discrimination. My mom realized that both because I didn't get along with my family at home, because a lot of them didn't accept me for who I was as being, autistic, and because I did not accept how they treated me, and same thing at school, because I stood up for my rights. Being at home and being in a regular school wasn't the place for me, so I was put into a school for kids with autism in Boston. Then I spent about 6 years there, fell behind academically because, they weren't, for the first 2-3 years, I wasn't getting any tutoring, nobody was doing anything, and there were times I couldn't use a computer. I was only allowed to use a computer, I think, 30 minutes a day, and I did do a lot of academic research on it, how to do certain things, but I did a lot of reading. I did more research on history, so I was really good in history. So when I took my history regents, even though I didn't get tutored in history, I got an A. However, mathematics, which I was always bad in, I didn't do so well because no one was tutoring me. I left middle school only learning, that grade level. So I left middle school when I was in grade 7. So I only knew math up to grade 7 when I left middle school because of the bullying. So yeah, I knew, PEMDAS, I knew the order of operations, I knew stuff up to about grade 6, grade 7 algebra. I wasn't that far behind when I left middle school. I was actually at about grade 7 level. However, in grade 7 and 8, the bullying became so bad that I couldn't really focus on academics. I was focusing more on the bullying and the discrimination. And I basically was doing poorly in a lot of my classes, and classes that I used to do really good in. It's not because the material got harder, it's because the bullying got worse. So then, I went to another school, where I fell even more behind academically. So I was stuck at where I left school. I dropped out. My mom took me out when I was in 8th grade, but they were still teaching 7th to 8th grade math. So I understood up to that level. I got up to the point where we were learning, if I'm recalling, triangles. We were learning obtuse angles, complementary angles. We were learning geometry. So I understood some concepts of geometry so when I took an algebra quiz, I understood the angles of triangles. I knew that a right angle is 90 degrees, complementary is, and supplementary. So I knew my angles. But I never got to the point of how to do the Pythagorean theorem. That was in 9th grade. You learned that in 9th grade, but I never got to that level because I dropped out because of the bullying. So then, when I left the special ed school, let me say the name of this. I almost said the name of the school. Okay, when I left the school, I took my Regents exams, and because I finally got tutoring in classes I was supposed to be taking, had I not been bullied, I passed my Regents. And I got an A in history. I got a passing grade in science. In fact, I went to Massasoit Community College while I was in Boston, the Canton campus, and when I took biology, I got an A, a 4.0. And I haven't transferred my grades over to LaGuardia. I already have above a 3.0 GPA. My GPA is pretty solid right now. And if I transfer those 4 credits over, my GPA will probably be even higher. However, even though I'm working on becoming a meteorologist, I'm having a lot of trouble right now. I'm currently hardly employed. I only work 4 hours a week in retail because the job I got was not through the company, but through an agency that serves people with disabilities. Because of autism, because of the stigma associated with autism, not because of my disability, but because of the stigma associated with it, I'm having trouble finding employment. And no, my disability doesn't make it harder for me to work. It makes starting things a little difficult, But other than that, I actually do very well. I'm a very quick learner. When somebody teaches me something, once I do it a couple times, it sticks with me. In fact, at my job where I work, most people do one thing. Like one person does does the office, one person does cashiering, another person does stocking, another person does that. I do everything in the store. I take phone calls. I can't be a cashier though. That's the only thing I'm not allowed to do. However, I do everything else. I help customers find printers. I get printers for customers. I even get customers to buy protection plans, which are very vital for the store. And I also help customers carry out their items. I do stocking. I do everything. And even though I'm applying for a job and I list all these things that I do, no one's hiring me. And I've been applying to fast food places, and I've mentioned that I've worked in kitchens before. I've served food. And still nobody hires me, despite having a perfect resume for it. Why? Because being the doofus that I am, I put in my resume that I went to that special ed school. I'm like, why? And even if I don't put it there, my autistic symptoms show. Like I'm a little socially awkward. And a lot of them may realize, he's socially awkward. There must be something wrong with him. Let's not hire him. Even though it's illegal to discriminate against people with disabilities, guess what? It still occurs. Why? That if it doesn't occur, then explain why 95% of people on the spectrum who graduated college are still unemployed or underemployed. Explain that. No, it's not because they can't do the job. It's because either nobody freaking hires them or they get fired for having a disability. That's why. And I'm definitely a victim of that. And I'm in college, so that should prove a point. I mean, the fact that Trump's being president, it's going to make things even worse for people with disabilities. People people who are minority, people who are LGBTQIA. It's going to make things worse for all of those people. And case in point, people should fight for their rights, as I did. I'm actually in a bad situation because I fought for my rights. Because I fought against abelism in my public school, I was punished for it. And I had to be sent to a special needs school because I spoke up my mind and I fought for my rights. I was bullied to the point that my mom had to take me out of public school for my own protection and put me in a special ed school. And even though my mom supposedly did it for my protection, she also had an ulterior motive, which was to separate me from my family since I didn't get along with them. And now that I'm out of my mom decided to put me into a group home. Well, the reason she did that was both because she felt that I needed to transition from a very restrictive environment to a less restrictive environment. But in fact, the place I am in right now is just as restrictive. Not as restrictive, but in the apartment, it's actually more restrictive than when I was in that special ed school in Boston. So, I guess this is the price you pay for advocating for yourself. But you know what? I'm not going to stop because there's always a silver lining at the end of the tunnel. I mean, look, Martin Luther King Jr., who was jailed, who was ridiculed, whose house was bombed, even though he got assassinated, he made huge changes in this country that actually, even though, people of African American descent are still being severely discriminated against, it's a lot better than it was back in the 60s, I'll tell you that. But it's nowhere near perfect. I mean, there's still a lot of racism in Alabama. I mean, look, black voters were actually being pulled over and ticketed for going to voting booths down in Alabama when they were going to vote against Roy Moore. I mean, Doug Jones' victory should be a message, not just to the Republican Party, but to everybody in this country that sexual assault against women and bigotry against minorities and people with disabilities will not be tolerated. In fact, Roy Moore said that people who are LGBTQIA should be executed. You know what? It's a good thing he lost, and I hope that scumbag goes to jail. Anybody who wishes death upon innocent people, who wants to execute people who are different, does not deserve to be in public office. And it's a miracle that Roy Moore lost. I guess even God didn't want Roy Moore to win. Anyway, and so for all you evangelicals out there, guess what? God was against Roy Moore because of his message of hate. And Trump will be brought down too, I suppose, because he's a racist and bigot. But putting politics aside, I want to keep on mentioning people who fought through barriers even worse than mine. I mean, look what Mahatma Gandhi had to go through. And Nelson Mandela. He spent a lot of his life in prison. Guess what? He became the first black president of South Africa, and one of the most famous too. His party is still the leading party in South Africa. He formed that party. He became part of it. Maybe, who knows, maybe there'll be a silver lining. Maybe, who knows, maybe in 20 years I will be on national television delivering the weather. If things don't go array for me, or array for me. Array, like, things don't mess up for me. If everything goes the way I would like to in the next 5 to 10 years and nothing major bad happens, like my mom does not prevent me from going to Mississippi State University and lets me go there, I will probably get a part-time job being a broadcaster there, and I'll probably work up the national ladder, going from a small town maybe to a larger city, and maybe to an even larger city, and maybe to New York, and then maybe to national. That's how I think it will happen. But my mom has to be part of this. She doesn't want me to go to Mississippi State. She wants me to stay here and do an online degree, which unfortunately, and to my chagrin, my mom doesn't want me to do that. And if I do go down to Mississippi State against my mom's wishes, if I don't go down to Mississippi State in accordance to my mom's wishes, I will unfortunately screw my life over. I will once again let somebody else make decisions for me that will ultimately hurt me, not help me. So I've talked with my mom, and she's against me going down. And she says she wants the best for me. If you really want the best for me, you should sit down for a few hours and think about what I'm thinking. Okay, that if I don't go, it will take much longer for me to become a broadcast meteorologist, and there's no guarantee that here in New York City I'll get any position right away. You got to start from somewhere small, like a small town in the South or in the Midwest. I've been thinking about this for a long time, and my biggest shot at being a broadcast meteorologist is to work my way up. Even though I live in New York City, I won't necessarily get a job here. I'll have to work myself up the ladder. Start off small, go big. And in Mississippi, there are a lot of small towns that are hiring, fresh graduates from broadcasting school. And there's not a lot of people in broadcasting. There's thousands of small towns across the country that will hire somebody like me, and that I can work myself up the ladder. From there, it might take maybe a decade, but probably by then I'll probably be working in some large city, maybe like Boston, Washington, and maybe I'll go down up to New York and then perhaps national. I might even go straight to the Weather Channel. But I need my mom's help with that. Not help, but her support. She can't be against us. She has to be with this. And I'm going to talk to her again, perhaps tomorrow, because it's kind of late now. But I think that maybe if I convince my mom, she might let me go there. But it's going to take a lot of convincing and a lot of my effort. Because I have a disability, and my mom's, kind of thinks that I'm not going to be as successful because of my disability, or that I'm going to screw up because I have a disability and I'm probably going to do something that will hurt my future. She wants me to stay here, which will in fact hurt my future. So her suggestion is even worse. Maybe if I convince her enough, she will let me go. Just pray for me, guys. Just pray for me that I end up going to Mississippi State, graduate, and go find a job in broadcasting without any discrimination because of my condition. Maybe it's best if I just hide my disability from the interviewers, not show it on paper, but then I hope that they don't judge me for how I present myself during the interview. I've been trying to hide my disability, not show any of my symptoms, but in fact, when I try so hard, my symptoms find a way to show. Well, thank you for watching. Bye.